So welcome everyone to the April 2021 Trees Around the Globe Student Research Campaign webinar. Uh, Today we're going to focus on some really cool things that are happening this month at NASA and the Globe program and with the campaign, and something that's going to be really awesome happening next month with the campaign. But as you know, we don't have our trees in the news section anymore. Dr. Christopher Schumann, our emeritus campaign team member, had other things that he needed to work on. So with his science priorities and things like that. So we lost him, hopefully not for good, but as far as on the campaign, we're going to be, taking over for a bunch of this stuff that he has done. I just wanted to just show you this because I just came across this picture the other day, and since we're talking about all things trees lately and land cover, Peter, we're looking at something called the Angel Oak of Johns Island in South Carolina. Just thought this was some really cool dramatic pictures. The one on the left just boggles my mind, but wanted to show you this because, as you know, all trees have different looks, personalities, structure. And I know you've seen lots of them over the years, and I know your students have taken observations of so many different looking ones as well. But this one, this Angel Oak, is approximately 400 years old. It's a southern live oak on Johns Island in South Carolina, and it has what I think is really amazing: the way the structure is, the way the branches are formed, that it produces a 17,200 square feet of shade with 1,600 square meters, which is absolutely mind-blowing. I like how they mentioned it. This is from the website. It's under its iconic gnarled branches. So, and I wanted to show you this because there's another fact that I saw on one of the forestry websites that, did you know that a large oak tree can consume about 100 gallons of water per day? And a giant sequoia, which are up there, near where Peter Nelson is living and based, can drink up to 500 gallons of water a day. So I just want to showcase you, and that's per tree. So just think of that water intake that these trees have. And the one on the bottom here, this image credit from the city of Charleston, South Carolina, shows you just how big this tree is with the scale of the people. Just wanted to show you that this is just an example of an amazing tree called the Angel Oak of Johns Island. So today we're going to talk about trees are long-term, and we're going to have a featured presentation by our own Peter Nelson, and looking back at globe tree data for tree growth. And then we're going to be talking about a couple of things. Dorian's going to introduce you and bring you up to speed on the Globe Trees Family Guide, and I'm going to talk to you about the 2021 Community Trees Challenge that's happening right now. I'm sure probably all of you have heard of it by now, but I'm going to show you, we're going to kind of test drive you through the website, show you some cool graphics and videos, and Dorian's going to do the same with giving you a tour of the Globe Trees Family Guide. And then we're going to finish up today with just some some communal questions that we want to talk about when we're looking at trees, and specifically, some of the things that our team has been thinking about, when we want to ask folks such as yourself and your students to take tree observation. What are some of the other things that we can, discuss or have the students talk with you about, or talk with each other about, or even with researchers about, about trees and where observations are needed. Where are there not observations? Where are there observations? Why are repeat observations important? Things like that. And we're going to have an open discussion at the end, towards the end of the webinar today. So as you know, today is April 20th. So happy, almost Earth Day. Here's our core campaign team. You know us all. I should have brought this up here earlier, but this is what we're going to talk about. I'm going to talk do a little intro, do some campaign metrics, and then I'm going to introduce you to something also that's happening right now. It actually starts tomorrow. It's a 2021 Earth Day at NASA virtual event. And then we're going to talk about all the things I mentioned earlier, from the Globe Family Tree Guide to the Peter Nelson's presentation on tracking tree growth over time, looking back at globe tree data for tree growth, and then the 2021 Trees Community Challenge, Science is Better Together. And then these action items that I mentioned that Pter Falcon is going to lead us in. And then we're going to announce something called the Trees Campaign Half-Day Workshop. And when I say half a day, I mean 5 hours. So don't be scared of that, but it's going to be awesome. And I'm going to show you this. I'm going to make you wait, close to the end to get some of the details here. But I'm going to tell you, it's going to be a really cool event, really awesome event, literally spanning about 15 time zones. So, and then we're going to wrap up after that. So, couple of the we've had a huge influx of data coming in over since the last webinar, which was March 9th. So that was about a month and a half ago, and I want you to focus here on this full campaign. I should mention, the full campaign here, we've had a bunch, but almost 33,000 tree height measurements since the beginning of the campaign. And just in this year of the campaign, we just hit 10,780 tree height measurements. And for the full campaign, we're at over 14,000 global sites. Land cover measurements, we're at 18,595 at 12,464 global sites. And for green up, green down, we've seen a huge uptick in this, and that is primarily for many of you who are on this webinar as well, who are part of the European Phenology campaign, because the spring portion of the campaign, of the European Phenology campaign, started recently. So there's been a huge increase in green up, green down observations. It's pretty cool to see, because in the fall, when the fall part of the campaign starts for the European Phenology campaign, we get a huge uptick in measurements, and then it kind of fades out to almost nothing for a while, and then we see this huge surge or resurgence of greenings observations, green up and green down measurements. Well, in the northern hemisphere, as you know, it's greening up now. The southern hemisphere greening down, and then opposite in the fall. So it's really cool to see this uptick, to see all this data coming in. But for the full campaign, for that, we're over 18,700 green up, green down measurements, and we have that from over 624 global sites, which is really impressive, because these are just, student submitted data, because as you know, the greenings observations aren't part of the NASA Globe Observer like land cover and tree heights measurements are. That's why we don't have those huge numbers like we do with those, but we have really, really great numbers at over 18,000, for the full campaign. And I will say that 95% of those observations are coming from the European Phenology campaign. So we thank our colleagues and friends who are running that campaign, Bara, Dana, and Lenka, who are running that campaign, so out of the Czech Republic. So thank you so much for that. It's helping us provide a lot of awesome data for the students to use in student research projects. And here is our latest map for tree height, land cover, greenings, and carbon cycle. And we have, as part of the campaign, we've had 31 webinars. This is the 32nd specifically to the campaign since the beginning on September 15, 2018. We've had 8 special webinars. What that means is we've had ones that we've had at NASA studios, and we've had other ones where we've, had our tree campaign folks present at like a Globe Africa or the Latin American Caribbean region, or even at the European Phenology campaign. We've presented at a lot of these different ones all about our trees campaign. And you can see the majority of those recordings on the campaign webinar website on the Globe pages. We have participants from 55 countries, and we have an uptick in blog view. We have 40 blogs that are part of the campaign since we started, and we just topped 111,800 views on these 40 blogs. So that's awesome. Over 111,000 views on these blogs. So great stuff. And as you know, we have lots of great measurements, and the database is just building up, and that's why we're getting really great student research projects. And I was one of the judges, and I know many of you were, for the IVSS projects, and we saw a lot of, at least I did with I think I did 7 of them this year, and I saw a bunch of students who were using data that was already in the Globe database, because some of them weren't able to collect the data because of lockdowns in specific countries around the world due to the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. So it was great to see that that data literacy, where they were grabbing the data from another source, or whether it be the Globe data or the NASA data. Some folks were looking at the NASA data as well, and then taking that information and creating research projects. And if they collected data themselves, some folks that I judged, some students were looking at their data, comparing it to the other globe data and then also the NASA data. So very exciting to see that. So here we are in our, you've seen this year 3 scaffold structure. We are in the 3rd tier. You can see it's submitting and presenting student research and the workshop. So right now we're going to be talking about, I'm talking a little bit about what was presented in IVSS. We're going to hear in the workshop from lots of other students from all over the world and teachers and educators from all over the world as part of the workshop. And then we're going to finish off this year, July and August, and our campaign team has talked about it. We're going to do a bunch of training sessions on different things related to trees and land cover and all these different, some of these major protocols, and looking at the data and doing so hopefully you can join us for this. They're not all planned yet, so stay tuned for that, because at NASA, we work on cutting edge science. So things change in the blink of an eye. So we really like to, we prepare to a certain point, and then we then grab that really specific, recent, up-to-date, cutting-edge data, and then we go from there with what we want to, further plan for our events. So Earth Day, as you know, is essentially 2 days away. April 22nd is Earth Day, but starting tomorrow, there is an event called the 2021 Earth Day at NASA, and it's a virtual event. Here I have a URL, and if one of my colleagues for the campaign wants to throw that URL into the chat, that would be great. But here, this is going to be a virtual event where you can go through a variety of Earth Day activities, including there's live talks, there's games, videos, there's downloadable posters and books. There's going to be some Meet a Scientist videos up there. There's going to be a live chat with, I know I'm going to be part of it. I believe Dorian and Peder Nelson are going to be part of it, and NASA scientists are going to be all part of this, where there's going to be live chat throughout the next 3 days. So I know I'm going to be on tomorrow talking, in the live chat about ice and ICESat 2 and sea level rise, things like that. And then we have a bunch of folks who are going to be talking about GLOBE. So we have some folks from the GLOBE program who are going to be part of it. So with that said, go ahead and check this out. You will have to go on and register. It's just basically, it's an email. You put it, said email and password, so you can easily get into the event each day. So you don't have, so it's just not a free for all. You can just get in and you can fine tune what you want to see, on your, in your account, in your page. But this graphic that you're showing here is just, it's going to be a clickable graphic on the page when it goes live. The page that you see here is live. It's just that it won't allow you to go into all the specific things. It'll go live tomorrow with all the specific things you can do. But there's going to be something that's really cool too. It's going to be an online scavenger hunt, and it's kicking off the Grow for Launch, where they're discussing about how plants are grown in space, like on the International Space Station. And that's a run out of the out of another NASA center like NASA Kennedy and NASA Johnson Space Center. NASA Kennedy is the lead behind that, but it's going to be really cool to see, and go check that out. Hope you become part of it. And if you have questions during you'll see in there's a section there for live chat. When you go in, you can go in there and ask questions, and we'll have, our chat open throughout the day tomorrow as a science, education, communication experts with NASA and the GLOBE program to answer any questions that come in. So I just wanted to, bring you to that. That virtual event is going to be a really cool event. And as I mentioned, Earth Day is in 2 days, but we're running this April 21st to the 24th. So essentially, 4 days. It's a 4-day event, because we don't want to have to cram everything in one day. We want to break it out throughout the days, so we don't bombard people with too much information. So I'm going to pass it over to Dorian here in a second, when she's going to talk to you about the Globe Trees Family Guide. And Dorian, I'll stop sharing if you want to share your screen.
All righty, let me go ahead and do that. And let's see, try again. It says it's disabled. Maybe I just need to wait a second, have it enabled. Host has disabled screen sharing.
Hold on, let me go here.
Really excited about sharing this with everybody. What's really neat. All right, cool. As we've gotten to this point now where we are, get it in present mode, where we've had so much time to be building up our different resources and ways of going about and sorry, I got to move this over here to the right place. Can you guys see the slides now?
I think you want to go to presentation mode, Dorian.
All righty.
Just that play from start would be good, probably.
All right. Very good. Let's see there. Is that working? Let's try
Oh.
there and share. How about now?
Yep,
Perfect.
looks good.
Good, marvelous. Okay. And get my mouse over there. I've got the two screens here, so it makes it a little confusing, but it's really exciting now that we've gotten so many resources. We've had a chance to look at some of the different IVSS projects that students have done. We've had some of our team members using the Globe Observer tree height and other tools in camp settings and with Girl Scouts. So we're super excited now to have a trees guide. Okay, now it's not letting me go to another slide. So give me a sec, one more time. Slideshow, play from start. All right, and it still will not let me move it. Brian, do you happen to have my slides? I'm sorry to do that to you, but I may have to have you share. I don't know why it will not.
It's all good. I'll get it. I have
Cool.
it up here.
Very frustrating. Try one other thing.
Oh.
Yeah, okay, cool. Nope, I'll go ahead, stop sharing
Right.
and let you do it. All right, so what we did is we got together, Brian, myself, and lots of other folks who run some of these different campaigns and who work with some of these different tools. And we looked closely at the clouds family guide and got some ideas. And what our goal was with this was to come up with a way to enable people of all ages, multi-generational groups, to be able to look at trees and even have some kind of developmentally appropriate, based on what age they are, questions that they could delve in deeper to answer and better understand trees. So next slide, please. So the trees family guide, we'll run you over to it, and I'll take you through a couple of things on it. But what we did is we divided these adventures, these kind of journeys, into sprouts, seedlings, and saplings. And if you'll go to the next slide. So we start off with our little sprouts. And so our sprouts are people like my grandchildren. There are our little folks up until about age 8 years old. And of course, you'll know, and you'll be able to determine, you'll know the people, the audience with whom you're working with, as to how to use these different resources. But when we're looking at our sprouts, we have some questions where we're helping them to focus on some of these more easily observable things, such as tree height, starting to understand trees and carbon, impacts on trees, both positive and negative, so kind of like how they can be caretakers for trees, and then trees as habitats. And next slide. Then we move on, and now we're looking at our seedlings. So our seedlings are our upper to middle school age level students. And here we continue to look at the tree height, the trees and carbon, the impact, and trees as habitats. But now we're getting into much deeper questions and providing them with resources to use that go into much more detail. And next slide. And then finally, we have our saplings. And so for our saplings, we're talking about ages 13 and up. Again, we're looking at those basic concepts, but now we're looking at things like how are trees and biodiversity impacted? What factors impact trees in your community? And that sort of thing. And if we go to the next slide, and then Brian, if you'll tap on this slide, it should be hyperlinked. And so we'll take a look at the, tree height guide, or not. Is it in?
I can stop sharing it. If you can just go, if you just want to go to the website.
I can do that. Yep, you got it. So,
Easier.
thank you guys for putting up with.
I think everyone here understands Zoom technology. Yeah. Did we lose Dorian?
I don't see her on the list anymore. So we may have. There she comes. She's popping back in.
All right.
I have to say, I love the names of the groups that the team came up with: sprouts, saplings, seedlings. That's really cute.
I'm pretty sure that was a Heather Mortimer thing for sure.
Dorian, you're muted if you're speaking.
I'm sorry, with this home computer, I do not have a mouse and I do not have a keyboard because otherwise they interfere with my, so just let me bring this up.
Yeah, all good. We're all friends here. We understand.
I
It's
know
all
you.
good. All good.
All right, so Family Guide. And now let me share screen again. Come back over here, share screen, share screen. All righty, are we now seeing the Tree Family Guide?
Looks good.
Sweet. I should have just not gotten all fancy and made slides and just done it this way anyway. All right, so let's just jump in here and take a look at our little sprouts and see what we have here for our sprouts. Once you come in here, you can go ahead and go to that activity tracker, and that's something that you could print out and you could use with the kids to be able to mark off what they've done if you so desired. And if we go here to tree height, then a super developmentally appropriate question for our little people is, how tall are the trees around me? So then we talk about here, there's a number of different ways that we can measure how tall trees are. We have the video here that shows how to go ahead and do your tree height measurements. Here, we show how to use the Globe Observer to go ahead and measure some of the trees near you. So we go kind of link right over there to that site there. Come back. And let's take a look at something like, let's look at trees and habitats. So what kinds of animals call trees home? Take a look at that, let the kids think about that, respond to that. Then they can learn how animals use trees to survive. We have over here a list of some children's books that are about trees. Let me accept all cookies here. So you can come here and just find some of these different books that you could use to help kids better understand trees. We show here some range maps. These are from the United States, but I would imagine that if you're in other locations, you can find some resources that do something similar. You can come on here and we have a journey that is there, and these are repurposing resources that have already been developed in most cases. So here's this really good journey that the GLOBE program has developed for elementary age students, where they learn how to go out and make some observations in nature and to do some observational drawings. So basically what we're doing here is we're just taking them and we're directing them and connecting them directly with some of these resources. So I'll show you something here for our seedlings. In this case, let me take a look at trees and carbon. So we come over here and now we're talking about our older kids up through middle school. So here they're learning about the carbon cycle. They can watch this video here. Here, give them a little more information about how to go in and use the Globe Observer app and the trees tool. And then we're asking them to create something. So in each of these different journeys, we have an ask where we have a question to help formulate how they're going to interact with the trees, a learn where we give them some way to grab some of that background information, and observe, so that's our ask for them to have them go out and do something with it, and then our create, having them make something to kind of communicate their findings to others. I'll do one more here and show you. So with trees as habitats, now we're looking at these older students. So here we have an article on 30 years of habit change for the northern spotted owl. And then a NASA research project that was looking at a study that was projecting habitat loss for different vertebrate species. So they can do that to gain some background information. We give them some ways to go out and do some observations, and then have them think about making a creation, something they can use to, again, communicate what they're finding to others. So hopefully you will be interested, intrigued, see how easy it is to get in here and interact with our Trees Family Guide. And should you have some other ideas that you feel would be useful for us to add to this guide, reach out to us, reach out to Brian, let him know, what you have, what you feel would be a useful to add to this, and we can consider having it kind of a growing, living, breathing document. So I hope that was helpful, and thanks for putting up with my tech problems.
Thank you, Dorian. Yeah, as you saw in there, when Dorian was going through some of the activities, in the create section, and we do realize that we only have a couple things there, and that's what our purpose was. We only wanted to just showcase a couple things because we have too much information there, too many activities to do. People get overwhelmed and they don't want to come back. But yeah, feel free to reach out to me or anyone on our team about what you think would be a great resource. Maybe it's something specific for your region that you think would be beneficial for the rest of the globe. Just let us know like where you think it could go on the Globe Trees Family Guide, and we'll discuss it and most likely put it up there. But yeah, so we wanted to just showcase a couple things for each one of those journeys. So people, as Dorian mentioned, with that question, when they ask a question, just to get the students thinking about, or even like the students and the parents and the adults thinking about what are trees in the sense of tree height, or diversity, or impacts, things like that. So there's lots of really cool things to do. There's different ways to observe, different ways to analyze data, and they're all on there. And depending upon what level the learner is at, hopefully it's not too much effort to do that. But at NASA, we like when people put even more effort than is necessary into things, because that's how we basically flew a little helicopter on Mars, because it was something that people thought, oh, that's never going to be able to happen. But the engineers and scientists got together like, hey, we can do this. So this is just our small part of this is Globe Trees Family Guide. Lots of ways to think about. There's lots of ways to look at trees. So we're hoping that the Family Guide serves you well for that.
And some great summer activities. If you're hanging out with the grandkids, or you've got some younger kids, or someone who's going to be enjoying having kids around and wonders what to do with them this summer. This is a wonderful. Just copy that. Make a even a black and white copy of that activity tracker and let them have some fun. It kind of works like a little passport for them. So thank you.
Yeah. Excellent. So let me now go ahead and 1 second here. Okay, now we are going to pass it over to our campaign team member and co-lead, Peder Nelson. And he's going to talk to us about looking back at globe tree data for tree growth and tracking tree growth over time. And Peder, a lot of you have been to the webinars before. Peder is an expert in taking the data from both Globe and from online databases like NASA, NOAA, and using these online tools like, even like the NASA Viz system, grabbing ADAT, Collect Earth, Google Earth Engine, NASA WorldView, Open Altimetry, all these things. And he's really great at grabbing that data and being able to visually show what this data looks like basically in the real world on a map, so that you can understand that Peder is an expert in data literacy. So this is his forte. This is what he does. So we're always indebted for Peder as being part of the campaign, because he brings this level of knowledge and expertise that that we don't have outside of Peder, because Peder is has been doing this for a long time, and teaches about this at the university level, does research. So we're excited with Peder every time when he presents with us with the campaign. So let me pass it over to you, Peder.
Well, thanks so much for that wonderful introduction, Brian. I really appreciate it. And so today I wanted to spend a little bit of time as we're approaching Earth Day and have a little reflection time. Here we are getting close to celebrating 25 years of the Globe program. And it's just kind of amazing to think about all of the data, all of the analysis, all of the questions that have come up from students over that 25-year period. And so, this last year has really been an interesting opportunity for us to actually provide students and citizen scientists the ability to look back and be part of this really incredible program that early on and in the beginning of the internet had this crazy idea of connecting the world together, to monitor it, to observe it, to create a data set that could actually be valuable to the rest of us, here 25 years later. So this afternoon, I wanted to just take a moment here and reflect a little bit on what has been accomplished, and the amount of information that has been collected through opportunities like this Trees Around the Globe student research campaign that we've been running the last couple of years. And, much of this goes back to the carbon cycle. This is kind of the fundamental question that NASA is helping to support and is providing resources to scientists to answer these questions, to make models, to make observations and make measurements out there. And it's part of what the GLOBE program is trying to do through the database, through monitoring over a long time like this, is actually trying to understand the carbon cycle. And it takes more than just going out and making an observation at one point in time to really understand the processes that are happening here. And so, this is one of the great parts of being involved in generational science, like we all are involved in, is that the data that we collect today, we don't even know if those landscapes will be there in the future. And so the data and information becomes much more valuable every day after that initial measurement that was made. And so, I want to give a note to Noah here, because we've had a lot of questions about how tree height is related to the age of trees. And in some cases, it's a linear relationship. For every foot or meter that tree grows, it's another year of life. In certain other places, you don't have this easy relationship. And so I want to highlight that one way that we know so much about past climates is actually because of trees, because of the way that they react to the climate around them or the weather on a year-to-year basis. And so they help to record, how much water was there in the environment at a particular point in time through the tree growth, through these tree rings, that photosynthesis process. And so, this is a really important piece that isn't part of the GLOBE program necessarily. We're not asking people to go out there and core trees to find out how old they are. We're sort of using tree height. We're using these other measurements, soil moisture and other things like that, to try to understand that ecosystem and approximate some of the age of those trees or the health of those trees. But I wanted to highlight this as something that Noah, a supporter of the GLOBE program, does do and does provide. And this is the way that you actually get in there and look at how old that tree really is. And so as a result, here in a lot of the work that we do, we're not actually measuring those trees. So yeah, how do we know how old those trees really are? Well, one way is to go out and actually make some of these measurements. Over 25 years, I would expect that there has been some schools, some communities that have actually planted trees. And that's a great way to know exactly the age of the tree. Is you plant that tree on May 21st, May 20th, 2019, you know exactly how old that tree is. Otherwise, and if we can do this, we can actually record that and put it into a database like this, like the GLOBE program provides to us, and we don't have to manage that data, right? It's part of the infrastructure of the GLOBE program that we can all take advantage of over many years. And so, one of the things that I just wanted to do is go in here and look at some of these locations of the tree heights, and look at where we've actually collected just tree height data. And I think, this is really, kind of interesting that when we use the GlobeViz system like this, we can encourage students to maybe go back and look at past landscapes or past measurements before we have them go out, or before they go out into locations. And to me, one of the things that when I look at this map is, over 25 years, we can see the areas that tend to have a lot of trees, or areas that may not have a lot of trees, right? We have a lot of blank spots on the map. And especially if we look at the United States, and if we look across to our colleagues over in Europe, we can again see, a really good density of data, especially through Central Europe here. But you notice that there are certain locations where we just don't have that type of information. Nobody's made that tree height measurement. And so, since it's been estimated there's about 4 trillion trees out there, each one of us has about 400 trees out there that it would take every single one of us measuring to actually measure every tree across the globe. Around the world. And so obviously this is a big challenge, right? And so, what's interesting is here, we've measured trees at about 15,000 sites or locations around the world. And if we look back at some of these early measurements that were made, you can see in about 7 years, kind of early on in the program, there was only about 700 locations that were measured. And so, over time, you can see how the contributions of every group of students going through the GLOBE program has contributed to this really vast and valuable data set. And so, one of the things that when I look at this, we can actually see the early contributions. And one of the things that I like to do with information like this is ask the question, how has this landscape changed? Are those trees still there? Are they still growing in that same location? Or has something happened to them over that 25 years of their lifespan that has been there? And so, if we just get a little bit of information on one of those early data points. Here's a location in Oregon, near where I'm located. And you can see that they actually measured this one in 1995, a tree height of 0.1 meters. Now, when I see that, all of a sudden I kind of get a little skeptical. Okay, that's a really, really short tree that they probably might have just recently planted, right? Because they actually tell us that they planted a maple tree of some sort, an Acer rubrum. And so what's kind of interesting about this is that we can use the satellite data that NASA has been supporting to look at how this particular location has changed over time. And so, the question becomes really obvious in terms of the carbon cycle. How tall do we think this tree might be 25 years later at that location? I would expect it to probably be, maybe 25 feet tall if it grows a foot a year. But that's a great hypothesis and a great question that you can explore using some of this early data set like this. And so, we could go around and I find it really interesting that here on Iceland is one of these locations that has some of this early data, right? And so, this is, to me, the incredibly valuable data that has been collected by people early on in the GLOBE program. And what would be incredibly interesting to see is to revisit some of these locations from some of the early Adventures of the Globe program to see how have these landscape changed? How has the landscape changed? And so the great thing is, in our tree challenge, one of the places that you can go to investigate this is a tool that I've brought up in the past. And there have been some nice additions to this that I want to highlight. But one of the layers that is really valuable when you're exploring where trees are located or how those early globe measurements might have changed is to get the global land cover that's available inside of here. And when you search and actually add this inside of here, there's some date restrictions. Again, NASA has science missions. In this case, the MODIS sensor that was put on the Terra and Aqua satellites that collected data that allows us to actually have 20 years of land cover locations where we can identify trees, or we can see some of these changes that might have happened in a location. And so, one of the great things that we could do that I find really valuable is we can go back to 2018 and we can see where the trees are located. And I'm just going to zoom in on my part of the world where I spend a lot of my time looking. And I want to highlight an area that I know has changed an awful lot, and that we can we don't have any globe measurements for. And so the only way that we know that this landscape has changed is through satellite data, is through those types of observations. And that's, this trade-off between the globe program and having students out on the ground and their ability to get there, and our need to have continuous observations to actually monitor that carbon cycle. And so you can see, I want to highlight this big patch down here in Southwest Oregon, Northern California, because one of the things is that this is a forested landscape, and you can see the land cover of evergreen needle leaf forest that is labeled around it. You can see the red area of the city of Grants Pass. That's right there. And then we can see the ocean, the water body that's out there. And one thing that we would expect to see is, in this part of the world, we have a lot of forest fires. And so we can actually roll back in time and actually see how this landscape has changed. And the reason why I'm focusing on this area is because this was an area that had the largest wildfire in Oregon's history, 500,000 acres. And one of the things that we can see inside of here is the areas that were treed at one point in time and that are no longer treed. And this all goes back to something that happened in 2002. And so you can actually see that here we have a forested landscape. And then just a short amount of time later, you can see how the forest fire came through and changed this location. And so, these are the types of changes that are happening in between our measurements on the ground. And so I want to highlight that this is a wonderful tool that allows you to time travel back and forth to understand some of those early globe measurements that have been made over time. And you can see, this is a pretty coarse data set. And when you turn it off, you can actually see the natural color landscape underneath it. And in this case, we can actually see a forest fire that is burning here in May 2019. So, between these on-the-ground measurements that have been happening with the GLOBE program over the last 20 years, 25 years, and then along with this continuous satellite observation that NASA has provided, we're creating this incredible monitoring system. If we can keep at it and actually keep going back to some of these locations on the landscape. So I wanted to just kind of highlight this because this is one of the activities that is part of our trees challenge that we have going on right now. Is to spend a little bit of time inside of NASA's WorldView and explore your landscape, explore how the area might have changed using this satellite data. So, you know, this is that nice land cover piece of things. But you can, like I mentioned, this data is kind of coarse. You can see it's a little bit blurry when we're zoomed in pretty close here. And so one of the things that has recently happened, and this was a nice collaboration between NASA and the European Space Agency, is this new data set that is available between Landsat satellite, which has 30-meter pixels, higher resolution, and the Sentinel series of imaging satellites that the European Space Agency has. And what we can actually do with that is we now actually have access to higher resolution imagery to be able to do this, to be able to track these locations on the ground. And you can see that our revisit time isn't as good on this data. And so we have a lot of blank spots on the map. And if we zoom out a little bit, we can actually get to the right date where we have a little bit of data, possibly. Or because I'm doing it live, it's not going to load up anything. You know, as it goes, as it happens. But I wanted to highlight that I'm going to just refresh that and do it and show it to you because it's pretty, yeah, there it is. All right. So you can see that with the higher resolution imagery, we don't get to see the whole, as much of the globe. We have these strips of data. But this is, you know, really, really valuable higher resolution imagery. So we can actually zoom in on Southern California, for instance, and we can actually start to see some of the features of the forested landscape. We can actually start to make out agricultural fields, and we can start to see some of these patterns at a much higher resolution than what we have been seeing inside of here. So this just recently became available, and you can see right here the difference in satellite imagery that's available to us. So, you know, as we look back at the last 25 years of the GLOBE program, these are some of the science movements forward that have happened that allow us to make better use of some of that data that was collected in the past in relation to some of the new data or some of these satellite missions that NASA has been running for 25 years. So I've taken up quite a bit of time here talking about changes over time and giving you guys some additional tools to be able to explore as we think about our trees around the globe and how they might be changing. And so I encourage you to explore some of the new data sets that NASA is making available that allow us to really look at these changes over time and to really celebrate your contributions to science that all of the students have made by using the Globe Observer and making tree height measurements or land cover measurements or cloud observations, or using some of the older, more traditional analog equipment to make some of these measurements. It all can be used in concert with these satellite imagery to help make sense out of the processes that are happening around us. So thanks for diving into this, and I'll turn it back over to Brian and Peder.
All right, thank you, Peder. Does anybody have any questions for Peder? You can either put them in the chat or you can unmute. All right, well, thank you, Peder. That was you know, a great look into, you know, what you can do with that data and how you can explore it using, you know, the different tools from the GlobeViz system to NASA WorldView and NASA WorldView. And there's so much stuff on there. It's really cool. You can look up any, basically any environmental variable in your location and it'll be there. So yeah, really cool. Everything from, looking at, forest cover, to greenings to, looking at potential landslides to soil moisture, lots of different things. And as Peder mentioned, it's not just the NASA data that's up there. There's Sentinel, data there from the European Space Agency. There's combinations of NOAA satellites. So there's lots of different things up on NASA WorldView because, all the data, the more data we have about our planets, the better. So yeah. So thank you, Peder. So let me go back and back to my presentation here. All right. So now what I want to get into a little bit is a 2021 Trees Community Challenge, Science is Better Together. So when you're looking at this thing here on the left, this graphic, it's called the Community Trees Challenge Activity Tracker, and it looks a lot like the tree science journeys for the sprout, seedlings, and saplings, doesn't it? So we wanted to give it a kind of a same feel to know that it's, kind of related because we're talking about 2021 and trees, and but it's not exactly the same because it doesn't really go into the depth that the trees the trees family guide does, and it doesn't go into the specific themes like, specifically, just specific themes for each journey, like looking at impacts and habitats and carbon and tree height specifically. It's kind of an overarching way for you to do a combination of things. So basically, yeah, this started on April 15th of this year. So it started last week, so last Thursday. And we've gotten a lot of tree height observations coming in through the NASA Global Observer. So anybody can participate. But the idea of what we did here was, we know that some folks can't go out, depending upon where you are in the world. It's not recommended that you go out and take observations because you have lockdowns and you don't want, you might have to access an area where there's lots of people, and your country's governments and local jurisdictions don't want you to do that. So we have it set up this year so that you can go out and take observations if you can do it safely, legally and all that, be safe during the pandemic. But then also, if you cannot, we have this opportunity to go and explore more, where you can learn, you can engage, you can create, you can observe with different things on the Trees Challenge. So you can learn more about the observations that you're taking, or you can learn more about the observations that are already in the Globe database. Kind of like on the Trees Family Guide, you can learn, through video, through online tools, through art projects, whether it be writing a tree pun, poem, or song. And I'm going to show you an awesome tree pun video towards the end of this end of this webinar. But then also you can, if you haven't already, learn to build a clinometer and then take tree height that way. And then there's lots of different activities you can do if you can't go out, or if you just want to supplement you going out taking observations. You can go take an observation and come inside and do some activities as part of the Trees Challenge. So, but we are looking for people who can to go out and take observations of as many trees as possible. So basically our challenges to you during this, and I will go back to that because I will go to the website, but to show you around on the Trees Challenge website. If it's safe to do so, take as many tree height observations as you can between April 15th and May 15th. Now, we don't want you to stop taking them after May 15th, but we just want to do what's, as you know, in Globe, it's called an intensive observation period. So you can think of this as a Globe intensive observation period where we're trying to get as much data in a short amount of time as possible. And you've done this before when it comes to like the cloud challenges as well, because the cloud challenge, that's basically what it is. It's trying to get as many cloud observations as possible during a certain time frame. But one thing we want you to also do is, if you're out there and you're taking a tree height observation safely, while you're at the base of the tree, because when you're at the base of the tree, that's basically when you can submit your data to the Globe database for tree height, why don't you go ahead and just hit the home button and then go to the NASA Global Observer land cover tool and take an observation of land cover, because that will allow you to get a picture of the, from the base of the tree, a picture in all 4 cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west. But then you can also get a picture looking up underneath the tree to look at the tree canopy, and then you can get a picture of the ground, basically where the tree trunk is, or the root structure, or the ground surrounding the tree. So this really helps us paint a bigger and better picture of what the environment is like surrounding that tree. And then also, if it's not safe to go outside and take tree observations, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we want you to visit the Trees Community Challenge website and check out, the lots of activities and, resources that you can go, learn more about trees, do more about trees, create things about trees. So here we have the Trees Community Challenge, and I'm going to go to the website in a second, but I'm going to go here first. This is a little promo here that's going to show you a little bit about it, and then we'll go directly to the website. It's a little promo about the Trees Challenge.
Trees. Diverse, they can be towering giants or petite saplings. Some live for thousands of years, recording their age in rings. They provide food, shade, shelter, and more for wildlife and for us. Some tell us when the seasons change through their leaves, while others continue to stand steadfast throughout the year. But no matter their differences, their height can reveal information about their ecosystems. By using satellites and ground-based measurements, scientists can track tree growth and monitor how well an ecosystem supports trees. Tree height is also used to measure the biomass of a forest, allowing scientists to calculate how much carbon is stored by trees. These are all important factors in conservation, resource management, and monitoring the climate. By using only a smartphone and the Globe Observer app, citizen scientists and students are helping create a global inventory of tree height available for everyone to use. Join us for the 2021 Trees Community Challenge by downloading and using the Globe Observer app.
All right, so that's a little promo there, but I'm going to go to the Trees Challenge right now, and it's a large URL here, and you'll see, but this is the 2021 Community Trees Challenge Science is Better Together website. You can see right here in the middle, we have a shortened one. If somebody wants to put that in the chat, that would be great. This is I think it was already put there, I believe, but 2021 Community Trees Challenge Science is Better Together. And it's set up with a certain structure here, is that, we start off talking a little bit about who can participate and how to participate, which is just something I just told you about. But then also we have that Community Trees Challenge activity tracker. And if you click on that, you will come to this PDF here, and this PDF will allow you to go different places. It's all hyperlinked. So you can go into these different sections, into observe, learn, create, and engage. And then, depending upon what you want to do, if you want to learn just about trees and why you're taking tree height observation and why tree height's important, you can learn about that here. If you want to go out and take observations, take land cover observation, take tree height, start a nature journal, learn how to build a clinometer and measure a tree, using that handheld clinometer, you can go here. You can create, different things. We have an activity that our colleague Tina Hart created out of the NASA Langley Research Center with some NASA summer camp students and educators about creating a tree cookie, looking at dendrochronology, looking at tree rings, things like that. You can map trees in your local area. You can be, artsy and learn about, write some tree puns, or if you're a poet, you can tell your students to write some poetry about trees. And that'd be really cool for us to hear, as part of the campaign, for you to share maybe, a poem or a song about trees in a different language. That would be really cool, I think. We had some folks, some students and educators from Malta present last year, and the students created some tree songs when they were doing some tree planting. So that was really cool to hear, to see that going on, and see how important, planting trees and observing trees was to the students of Malta. And then if you want to engage, you can learn, specifically about, ask an expert about trees. You can make a video about trees and share it with the Globe program. You can go to, of course, Globe is really active on social media through, different venues like Facebook and Twitter. But then also, there's lots of things you can do. You can share it on your personal pages. You can talk to your family about trees, your friends, your colleagues. So there's lots of things you can do. So this is just one really cool way of doing this, but that's the community tracker. So it kind of serves as a guide, to go through these different participation options. And then, we have it all broken down little by little here, kind of like you saw in the family guide, but this is specific, some more resources that you can check out. We did a webinar last Friday. Peder and I did it with our colleague Tasha Owen, based out of Oregon as well, through the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. We did one with the Los Angeles Public Library. I know some of you who are on this webinar today were part of that last Friday. So a lot of the information you're hearing is duplicated, but we're expanding upon it today. And then you can do lots of create and engage. And this is all to help you supplement the data that you're potentially bringing in while you're taking your tree height and land cover observations as part of the 2021 Community Trees Challenge, Science is Better Together. So feel free to take a look at this. And I know probably some of you have already gone out and take some tree height observations, or you had your students do that. And I thank you for that, because we've had I want to say about a little over 1,000, I think, maybe 1,200 at the right now since last Thursday. So we're having a lot of tree height observations coming in for sure. Not as many land cover observations, but the tree height ones for sure. And we are getting land cover ones, but please, take a tree height observation in the land cover one as well, if you can, do that safely, and you're not, you don't want to break any local laws or laws of your country as far as lockdown during this pandemic, and you'll always be safe in doing that. So, so hopefully, you'll join us in this if you haven't already. But check it out. Check out the NASA, the NASA virtual event as well, and then check out the family guide. So let me now go ahead, and we're going to switch gears a little bit. We're just going to have kind of hopefully we'll have an open discussion about a couple things here, some action items that we like to call them action items, things that we want to pose to you as the participants. Just a couple things here. And I'm going to pass it over to Pter Falcon now, and I will, Peder, do you want me to stop sharing or keep this up here?
I hate seeing myself.
Hey, that's a good picture from Killarney, so that's okay.
Thanks. That's fine. You can keep that up. So yeah, so if there's any questions for our participants here, we're going to be asking some questions to Brian Campbell, Peter Nelson, and Dorian Jennings. So if there's any questions you have for them, by all means, please go ahead and put them in the chat box. I actually have a few questions that I jotted down myself that I want to ask you guys. And hopefully, as I mentioned, if there's any other questions, please put them in there. I'd love to go ahead and pepper them with some questions, see if we can stump them.
And if anybody wants to add any, questions or answers to what Peder asks, I mean, that's fine, because we're all experts in something, right?
I think it's great that a lot of the things I was going to ask you guys kind of covered already. And I think that's some of the things that teachers and students would want to know. One thing I want to ask is, something that you wrote down earlier, is why is it important to have repeat tree observations when you're making your measurements?
Want me to go ahead and start that one, Peder?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll just address them to folks.
Yeah. Okay. So, so on my side of things, many of you know that I work with also the Ice Cloud and Land Elevation Satellite 2, and talking to some of my scientist colleagues, and I know Peder's talked to lots of his scientist colleagues as well, that having repeat measurements can serve multiple purposes. Repeat measurements of trees help us to understand how fast or slow that tree is growing, whether it's getting the right nutrients, whether it's getting the right amount of sunlight, or or getting the right amount of or the soil, what type of soil it has. But then also, scientists like repeat measurements, in a particular area, of the same trees, because it helps with something called data density. And data density is vital because it helps increase the database of data for scientists, and I talk, when I say scientists, professional scientists, professional researchers, student researchers, okay, even citizen scientists who want to do their own type of research. It really helps them have a much more robust database to grab all that data from. But then it also helps increase the potential accuracy of that data, because when you have, it's like the scientific method, when you do something once, it's probably not good enough. The results, most likely won't be the results that, they won't be completely accurate results. But when you do things multiple times, in combination with that data density, you increase that accuracy of the data, you increase what the potential validity of the data is. Hopefully that data, when you have more observations, in a small area, or repeat measurements in an area of specific trees, of wooded areas, things like that, it will also, help scientists understand that data is good for science, because that data has been shown to be repeated and repeated and repeated. And if you're getting the same types of numbers each time you're doing it, great. If you're not getting the same numbers when you're taking these triad observations, then you have another question you need to ask: why are my numbers different? Why are they different each time? So that's another thing that's another way to test out. So it really helps with that scientific validity of that data. And let me pass it over to Peder Nelson if he has anything to add to that.
Well, you definitely, you hit on all of the really important pieces there, Brian, in terms of, a measurement made multiple times from multiple angles allows us to average those together, allows us to have more confidence, to actually put error bars around a measurement. And that confidence interval of the measurement is a really important one. I actually, here, let me share my screen, because I have an example of this. I myself actually just last week wanted to, I found a really interesting tree. And so in the Globe database, you can actually zoom into an area. And unfortunately, the color that is defaulted doesn't quite work out too well. Green on green background, right? Try to find the points. But what I wanted to really highlight is that the spatial accuracy is an important one. And this is where depending on the satellite that you're working with, whether it be a laser like what Brian was talking about, or whether it be optical data, that spatial location of where that tree is located is part of what you're helping to reconcile when you do multiple observations. And so in this case, right here is where the point is ending up on the map. But here, according to imagery, is where the tree actually is located. That difference is one thing that we can actually help to reconcile with repeat measurements. I actually did 3 observations of that individual tree because I could actually see all the sides. And so you can actually, by going in here, we can actually go and see the individual measurements. I said at one time 27.8, another side 30.5, and another side 24.8, right? Which one of those is right? By averaging all of those together, we have a little bit more confidence in the true height of that when we compare it to the satellite data. The other great thing about doing these multiple measurements is that we get different views of that tree. There's one view, there's a different view, and then here is a whole nother view, right? Those multiple measurements, multiple angles, again, helps us to have confidence in those measurements and understand all of the way that the sunlight is reflecting off of that pixel or off of that area with it. And so having this information in that Globe database allows everybody to start understanding that location and being able to average things together and to gain more confidence in those estimates or measurements.
Thank you, guys. And to piggyback off of that question is, how often should citizen scientists and students go out and make repeat measurements of these trees?
Brian, we've had some conversations about this with scientists because it really depends on what you're trying to measure with those trees. One scientist who studies tree height said, go out there every 3 months and make an observation. And my first reaction is, wow, that's an awful lot. And then I remembered that trees grow. And so,
Right.
so depending on where you are, trees are continuously growing and actually getting taller even on that 3-month cycle. So that was one suggestion, was every 3 months. Right now here in Oregon, if I was looking at green up, green down, I would actually want to observe the trees almost every day during this April time period, where that leaf is actually changing a lot on a day-to-day basis. You know, if I was interested in kind of the longer cycles of tree growth, of succession processes like what's behind me, you may only need to do it once every year or so. So kind of from, I think I've heard, you know, depending on your science question, depends on the answer to that. Brian?
Yeah. Building off of that, yeah, I think, you know, what you hit on there, you know, if you're looking at like green up, green down, you know, if you're going from, you know, the springtime, you're seeing the blossoms and blooms come onto a tree and the buds, you know, I'd say, you know, because as you know, some trees, like here in Maryland, we have, you know, crepe myrtles and Bradford pears, where Bradford pears, I mean, they were in bloom for like a week and a half, and now they're completely done blooming. So, you know, the tree height from before their bloom to their bloom changed, and then now that they're not blooming anymore, that has changed again. And that's just something that just happens with that species. But yeah, but you know, when you're in those times, you know, those green up and green down times, and depending upon what you're looking for, you know, I'd suggest, you know, you could essentially go out every day to every couple days to go and take this tree out observation. You know, scientists love that data. They're not requiring and saying, hey, you need to go out every hour and take a tree out measurement of the same tree, because that's a lot of data. But yeah, as Peder mentioned, you know, we're talking to some ISAT 2 folks and some folks, I believe in Jedi too, that, you know, every 3 months is, you know, okay. But we'd recommend, you know, even, you know, closer, you know, anywhere from, you know, daily to, you know, I don't know, like, you know, once a week to twice a month to a month, you know, whatever's comfortable for you. But all the, you know, we will say that any data that you submit is vital data. I mean, that's data that, you know, is potentially used by student and professional researchers. So, but as you know, the more data, the better.
Thank you, guys. Peder, in your in some visualization you showed earlier on the Globe website, there's some areas where there's lots of data, and other areas where there's obviously there's not that much data. Are there any areas that we really want to focus in on where we don't have enough tree height data?
Yeah, you know, like I mentioned, there's 4 trillion trees, tree stems planted around the world, and if each one of us kind of focuses on trying to, you know, measure 400 trees, we would actually get we would get closer to measuring all the trees that we can. So if everyone aims for that, that would be great, and that means look around you. What's in your neighborhood right there? You know, the urban street trees are a really important one, because they are part of the environment that many of us live in, and so focusing on the trees that are right near us, the neighbors, getting to know them is a really good strategy. You know, in your neighborhood, do you have 400 trees, or do you not? And that kind of gets back to our larger question of, where are there trees and where are there not trees, and why is that? And so if you just kind of focus on the trees that are around you, that's a really good strategy. Those are really important, because, like I mentioned, they get into the energy budget that's around you that might reflect how hot it is in your house or in your neighborhood or in your city, that urban heat island aspect that many of us live in. And then, you know, thinking about how your town might be changing or has changed over the last 25 years. How might it change in the future over the next 25 years? What information do you want the students or the next generation to have? Those are all, you know, to me, guiding questions about where we need more data. As you saw, we're sampling just a little bit of the globe, just a very tiny little bit. And so if every one of us actually doubles the amount of observations that we're making, we would get closer. but we still need to recruit all of our neighbors, all of our family, and get everybody involved in this monitoring effort that Globe has been supporting for the last 25 years. And I hope will continue on for the next 25, so that as some of the predictions that scientists have made might happen, we might hopefully have some ground data or information there to actually help us to understand the changing climate that's around us.
Thanks. And Brian, this question is for you. I obviously don't have this I'm not going to call it a problem, but this snow, let's just call it that, living in Los Angeles. But for students and citizen scientists that do live in snow, what about taking measurements in their snow? Do they do anything different? Do we still want them to do measurements in the snow?
Yeah, see, we actually had that discussion. I gave a presentation to some folks in Alaska, and I actually went to some of my colleagues and said, hey, what do you do? These are like many of the people in the campaign here have seen Dr. Nancy Glenn present, and a couple other ones where I said, hey, when you want to go out and take it in, some places it's pretty deep snow, and the first thing that many of the scientists said was, well, when we do ground-based tree height observations, we do it during snow off. And I said, okay, understood. But what happens if they want to do it during snow on the ground? And they said, well, what you have to basically do is you have to, if you're using the app, and this gets a little tricky because it has you have to change a couple things, but you do it normally as you are in the app. But when you go in there and take an observation, because you're only going to be able to align the bottom of that line to the base of the tree, but it's going to be to the base of the tree where it sits, where the snow surface is. And then you're going to have to take a snow depth measurement, at the base of that tree. And that may not be easy. And you can add that information into that metadata section, because the answer you're going to get for the tree height is going to be a little different, because it won't take into effect the depth of that snow, but you can put that in that metadata section. That metadata section is that comment section when you're in the review section. So if you go and you take you angle the phone to the base of the tree, which is where the tree meets the snow line, okay, and then you do the top of the tree, you're going to get a specific height. But that is not the height of the tree, because there's a bunch of that tree that is still below the snow. So in the comment section, we recommend for those instances where someone might take it in the snow, put in there how deep that snow was, so scientists know to add that to the tree height measurement that the app returns. Okay, so it's one of those things that it doesn't happen often, and we can't really program that for snow depth into the app. We can just have it added into that section. But there are folks who have done that. They've taken the tree, but they put in the comment section, he'll hit up above, here's my tree height. But then they put in the comment section that metadata showing that up, and then Peder brought that up there.
Exactly. And so, so actually leaf on, leaf off photos are really incredibly valuable.
Yep.
And so the seasonality part of trees, the phenology of trees, is a really important thing that you can capture. This is one way that we help to classify our types of forests. Do they have leaves on the tree during the winter or not? Here, I want to highlight that actually, in fact, this is where doing that seasonality, it can be really valuable. And you can actually use the summer tree height to estimate snow depth. And so if ICESat-2 actually happens to come over during the winter months, one thing that we are measuring is that depth of snow. And so we can potentially use the seasonality difference to give us some other confidence in those numbers. We can also use it to, like I said, estimate that snow depth. Here in the middle, I want to highlight, here are the tops of some trees in January. And then I went back to the same location about 6 weeks later, and you can no longer see the tops of those trees, right? And so capturing that phenology like that actually does allow us to understand the height of that vegetation during the summer months. And one of the big considerations that we have here in Oregon is actually it's unsafe to go around the trees, the tree bases themselves. So if anybody does measure tree heights during the winter, where you're going to the base, you want to practice deep snow safety. Here, the snow is actually about 8 feet deep already, and you can see that one of the characteristics is that you actually have snow that isn't as dense or as deep around the tree itself. So you can end up actually suffocating, and we've had some people in Oregon have that happen to them. So be careful about being near tree bases in the winter months. So this is where the land cover tool can actually help you and be maybe a safer option, is to go back and just do some repeat photos of that location. And then if you have a summer picture and you can actually measure the height, you can combine those together to actually calculate how tall or how deep is that snow in that location. So repeat photos, we want to encourage you, because there's a lot of things that you can do when you have more observations of the same landscape.
Those are some wonderful photos. That's great timing, by the way, on your part.
Hey, thanks. It's almost like I've thought about this before, right, Peder?
So I want to go to just one more question. We'll just close with this one. And this one I'm going to gear towards Brian. Brian, so one of the questions I have is, when we work with students all the time, they usually say, like, what are you doing with my data? Or is there any publications, any research? What are research doing with our data? Will there be any ground truthing studies using student observations, citizen science observations, co-located with satellite data coming out? Or do we know if anyone's working on something like that?
Yeah, there are some folks with the ISAT-2 mission, and I know some folks like Dr. Nancy Glenn, who are what's called ISAT-2 early adopter. And ISAT-2 early adopter is someone who, prior to the mission launching, prior to the satellite launching, we selected a group of researchers from around the world who submitted plans to say what they're going to do with the ISAT-2 data. And Nancy Glenn, being a tree and vegetation scientist, she was showcasing what she was highlighting what she wanted to do. So we sent her simulated data prior to the mission, and then she started, showing what she could do with that simulated data. So she has been a big advocate on getting the citizen science data and working that into some of her ground truthing studies, because she uses sophisticated instruments like terrestrial scanners to measure tree canopies and things like that on the ground, combining that with the missions from like the satellite missions like ISAT-2 and JEDI, and taking that data and combining it with some of the citizen science data that's out there. And I know some folks who are, working with the ISAT-2 data, who are at NASA, but then also on the ISAT-2 extended team, meaning that they are on the ISAT-2 team, but they are working as university researchers and instructors and professors and faculty members. So they're working as, adjunct to the ISAT-2 mission, and they're actually going in and looking at the data, and they're looking for that density, that data density. They're looking for those repeat measurements in a specific area, because that's what they do. They look at the data when ISAT-2 goes over, and it takes multiple measurements of the same location, because a lot of research is very specific in location. When you're talking about, some people just want to look at the Amazon rainforest. Some people want to just look at, a group of trees in, Northern California or something like that. So they're looking for where ISAT-2 took that data repeatedly. And so therefore they're going to look for that data that is, going to be repeated in those areas. And that's what has happened with the clouds group. There's been a couple papers published, I believe, with some scientists using the Global Observer cloud data. As you know, the cloud data has been out for about 3 years longer than the trees data, and about, I think, 2 years longer, I think, Peder, than the land cover data. So we don't have as much data for those protocols yet, but they are definitely looking at that data and looking to use that data. They're just looking for that data density, looking for that, that specific data.
Thank you. Would you like to add anything to that, Peder, before we close this session?
Yeah, that data density is the biggest piece and the challenge to actually using any data for a scientific purpose. Making sure that you actually have measured enough trees to sample to be representative of that landscape. And one thing, trees are land cover. And so, one of the things that we've noticed is that if you can see the top of the trees, that usually means you're in an open treed landscape. And so, being able to get the data in the closed landscapes where you can't see some of the tops of the trees, or where areas like in urban areas where there's a single tree, all of this variation is really, really important for us to just be keeping track of where trees are located with it. And so we want to help scientists actually make use of it. We just need more data. We need more data in areas. And so we want to encourage everybody to participate in the science monitoring of Earth through making as many tree height observations and land cover observations as you can wherever you are, so that we can really keep track of the 30% of the land surface that is covered by trees.
Thanks, Peter. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
More data, the better.
Yeah.
So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close this portion out and then turn it back over to Brian. So Brian, I'm going to go ahead and mute, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Peter. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint again. So we're going to finish off with two things here, and I'm going to start off with this one here. And I gave a little teaser in the beginning, but on May 25th, that's a Tuesday, at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, that's 1 p.m. UTC, until 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. UTC, we are going to have the first Trees Around the Globe Student Research Campaign 2021 half-day workshop. I know it sounds like a long time, but we're going to have amazing presentations from amazing students. And what this is focusing on is the majority of the presentations that are going to be part of this are going to be students presenting from around the globe program from countries such as the United States, Colombia, Oman, Croatia, Taiwan Partnership, and potentially others. They're going to present their student research that they submitted to the IVSS 2021 call. So they submitted a bunch of things, and these are related to tree height, trees, land cover specifically. And these are folks that have agreed to do a presentation, to have their students do presentations at some point. So as you can see here, we're focusing on time zones. Peder and Peder are both in the Pacific time zone, so it's 3 hours earlier than me. But then from me, the folks in in Taiwan are 12 hours ahead of me. So you see, we were going to span about 15 time zones for this, and this is the best time we could come up with, this 9 a.m. Eastern Time to 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And the folks, we're going to set it up, the folks who are, the furthest away are going to be presenting earlier in the workshop. So stay tuned for an announcement for this. If you go on our campaign website, onto the webinar page, you will see this information put up there. It's not put up there yet exactly what all the presentations are. Once we get that solidified from, guaranteed from all the student presenters and the educators representing them, we are going to get that up on the website as well, so you know what the agenda is. And, because we don't necessarily, think that you want to be there for all 5 hours. We hope you are, but we're going to, and we have breaks built in there, by the way, what we call bio breaks, because everybody needs those. But for 5 hours, we're going to have presentations divided into 3 sections. And we're also going to have a featured presentation in the middle for a really cool Himalayan reforestation project and something called Walk with Janisha out of India. So it's a whole project looking at the looking at the Himalayan, the Indian side of the Himalayas, and a reforestation project that is underway right now. And some scientists and folks and a student named Janisha out of India are focusing on this effort. So that's going to be kind of in the middle of this workshop. So stay tuned for all this, but mark your calendars, pencil it in for Tuesday, May 25th from 9 a.m. Eastern, which is 1 p.m. UTC, to 2 p.m. Eastern, which is 6 p.m. UTC. So, stay tuned for all of that, and you'll see some information coming about that soon. But today I want to end with a trees pun video, which is very good stuff. We wanted you to end this this webinar today with a chuckle, and this is something we actually created for the Trees Challenge for 2020, but as you know, that was postponed due to the pandemic. But we created this and we modified a couple things to make it current. But these are puns, basically, a playful array of statements, bringing trees into the discussion. So I just wanted to showcase this with you, and we will end after this. And then I want to thank you for staying with us here and being part of the webinar today. But let me play this for you right now.
Are you a budding scientist? Wouldn't you want to know how tall that tree is?
A conifer you a tool to find out.
You won't believe this, but NASA has a application that uses trigonometry to measure tree heights. Oh, mangrove!
NASA uses satellites to measure forests, and now we're branching out and asking volunteers for help.
Volunteers in over 120 countries can participate.
Stumped about how the app works? There are only 3 steps.
First, hold your phone at tactile level and point it so you can seed the bottom and the top of the tree.
Next, number to the base and log your steps.
Finally, you can spruce up your location and optionally measure the circumference. It's okay to skip this step if you don't have a measuring tape.
The app takes care of the forest by calculating the sides of the tree angle.
Don't leave the app without sending in your data.
By contributing to this inventory, you're helping scientists see their trees from the ground.
Hearing your observations with satellite data is intriguing and could transform the way we look at forests.
You can do measurements when you are bored, or make it part of your routine. We'll never get sycamore observations.
That was hilarious.